Carolina and Kansas is part of the opening week of college basketball? Yes, please.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, November 8th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Carolina content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making this your first listen or watch to help you get ready for your weekend. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels, and our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Welcome in, everybody. Let's get right after it. This episode's brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, here's where we're headed today on the show. Obviously, the big thing we're talking about today is we got to get ready for this massive matchup that's coming up tonight against Kansas, who we owe some major payback to. We'll have our Four Corners preview, some comments from Jae'lyn about the Tar Heels that were really intriguing to me. The women's basketball team was back in action on Thursday evening. We got our weekend whip around where most of the fall sports are into the postseason play now. All of that coming up. By the way, stay tuned tonight for our live reaction pod immediately after that Kansas game. Mark Campbell, 2009 Tar Heel National Champion, will join me, and we'll unpack it all. Win, lose, or draw. Can't be a draw because this ain't the NFL, but we'll get after it. Okay, Kansas preview. Number 9 Carolina at number 1 Kansas tonight. True road game inside Allen Fieldhouse. 7 p.m. tip. Thankfully, not a 9. Woof. ESPN2 is the channel you're going to find it on. FanDuel has the line. It was 7.5. Just went back to Kansas, now favored by 8.5. Also, for those of you who are interested in such things, FanDuel actually has a whole section of extra like prop bets and all sorts of other things beside just, the over-under and the spread and all that. So go check that out if you want to. You are probably aware, but let me make sure that this is the front end of a home-and-home agreement these two teams signed. This year, the game is obviously played in Lawrence, Kansas. Next year, they will face off back at the Dean Smith Center. That is just good for college basketball. These are the kind of matchups that we need to see right now in the early part of the year. The biggest programs, the biggest names, the best coaches, all of this squaring off. And that's what we get here with Carolina and Kansas. Two of the very biggest brands, two of the bloodiest blue bloods in all of college basketball. This is two of the top 3 all-time winningest programs. Kansas is number 1, Kentucky 2, Carolina 3. That's kind of painful to have to say, but it is true, and that's where it is. So, this is what we need for our sport. And you might think, man, 2 historic programs, they must have played a ton on each other's campuses, right? No. This is just the second time ever that these 2 schools have played on one or the other's campus. Back on December 17th of 1960, that's right, so like 64 years ago, these teams played at Allen Fieldhouse. They've never played in the Smith Center or in Chapel Hill, so next year will be the first time the Jayhawks have come to Chapel Hill. And then you just think about all the storylines of the intertwining of these 2 historic programs. Remember that Dean Smith is a Kansas graduate. He played for Phog Allen himself. And if I remember correctly, Phog Allen was an understudy to James Naismith himself. So, this matchup is connected to the very beginnings, the very genesis of the sport of basketball. And that's part of why it's so good. Obviously, you know that Coach Williams coached both of these programs, 1988 to 2003. He was at Kansas before coming back to Carolina and then retiring just a couple years ago. So this is just what our sport needs, and I'm so grateful for it. Then just beyond the history of this, maybe the 2 other biggest storylines to me are, number 1, the fact that you have 2 kind of front runners for National Player of the Year in this game. Obviously, RJ Davis, and then for Kansas, Hunter Dickinson, whom Carolina has kind of owned in his time when he was at Michigan, if you'll remember, although that was when we had Armando Bacot in the paint. And that brings me to what I believe is the other massive storyline of this game, is the fact that we're going to look at the front court. We're going to look at that more in depth when we get to our Four Corners preview coming up in just a little bit. The series, this will be the 13th time these two teams have played. And interestingly, it might not feel this way because of recent history, but the series is actually tied 6-all. What's wild is that 7 of those 12 matchups have been in the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, the reason we all probably feel like Kansas has won a lot lately and would be surprised to hear that the series is tied is because the Jayhawks have won the last 4 times these teams have played, all of which, by the way, have been in the NCAA tournament. Let's trace it back. The 2008 Final Four. You remember that game? Kansas blitzed the Tar Heels. Carolina made a roaring comeback and then just ran out of gas. The 2012 Elite Eight, with a healthy Kendall Marshall, I fully believe Carolina wins that game. They lost, unfortunately, because not only was Kendall Marshall not there, remember Dexter Strickland was out with an injury. And so, I mean, it's just like you're just doing the best you can. Carolina had been able to survive. That injury happened against Creighton in the second round, right? And then beat Ohio in the Sweet 16. And then it was just too much to be able to do against Kansas. And then 2013, the very next year, the two teams played in the second round. And then obviously most recently in the 2022 national championship, Carolina had just beaten Duke and then had that big halftime lead against Kansas and could not hold on. So that's the last 4 times these teams have played. And that's why I say the Tar Heels owe some big time revenge to Kansas. Now, what's interesting is these two teams have played 5 times in the Final Four, either the national semifinal or the national championship game. That is a record for the most common matchup in the Final Four between any two programs. So again, just history. One other time they played in the national championship, that was the 1957 game where Carolina had to play, back-to-back multi-overtime games. And in that moment, the national semifinal and the national championship game was played on back-to-back nights. So just epic performance from the Tar Heels there. And then these two teams have played in the Final Four in the national semifinal 3 total times. 1991, 1993, as the Tar Heels were on their way to the national championship, and then that 2008 one that we already mentioned. The other thing you need to know, Kansas, number 1 in the nation, the Tar Heels are the program in the nation that own the most wins all time over the AP number 1 team. And that is 14 wins the Tar Heels have. And so can they add another? That's going to be a storyline we're watching. 14 times the Tar Heels have beaten the AP number 1 ranked team in the nation. That's pretty cool. And then just as we start to think about the game itself, this truly is going to be a great measuring stick for both teams, not just the Tar Heels, but Kansas. Yes, I know they're ranked number 1, but they are coming off a year in which they were a great team, but they didn't have much depth. A couple of the pieces they brought in weren't as good as they thought they were going to be, like in terms of shooting. And then they had some injuries that really hurt that depth, like Kevin McCullough, for example. And then they ended up losing to Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. So Kansas, who has a couple of those pieces back, but a whole bunch of new guys, they're kind of trying to figure out who they are, just as the Tar Heels are trying to figure out who are we in kind of this new iteration. And so I'm hoping that we see Coach Davis continue to utilize depth. And it's kind of funny because you know how Coach Davis is kind of famous now for not using much depth. The same is true of Bill Self. He doesn't use much depth at Kansas either. So I really hope early season like this, we see that from Hubert Davis. But there is this awkward balance of learning your team, wanting to get these guys some experience, but also you got to kind of play to win, because seeding and net rankings and all that are a factor even in these early season games. So that's kind of the balance. Another storyline I'm watching for in this game is, how Carolina's starting lineup in the opening game was kind of not what we expected, with Jalen Withers being at the 4 instead of Cade Tyson. Some of you out there I know expected that lineup, and kudos to you. I did not. And so that was a shock to me. So I'm looking to see if Carolina does the same. Is it the same 5 tonight, or is it switched up? Interestingly, Kansas, same thing. they did not start all the guys that I thought they were going to start. For example, AJ Storr, who comes over from Wisconsin, I thought it was a shoo-in that he would start. He did not. Diggy Coit, who's a transfer from Northern Illinois, is a 5'11 guard, was in the starting lineup for the Jayhawks. So I'm going to be watching that same kind of thing for Kansas. Speaking of that, Kansas has names right? Hunter Dickinson, we've already mentioned. DeJuan Harris, who's one of the best point guards in the country, a more kind of true point guard like Elliot Cadeau is. And then KJ Adams as well, who is a returner. And so all of those guys, but there's also a host of newbies. They've got a couple big-time freshmen, Raquise Passmore, who's a 6'5 guard. They've got Flory Badunga, who's a 6'9 big. He's like 220. And then all of these transfers. Already mentioned AJ Storr from Wisconsin, Diggy Coit from Northern Illinois. But then Zeke Mayo, who comes over from South Dakota State, reputation of a big-time scorer. Shaquille Moore from Mississippi State. Rylan Griffin, unfortunately, from Alabama. You might remember him from that Sweet 16 game last year, kind of caused some problems for RJ in that. Kind of had a hand in holding him at bay. Will they put him on RJ or with Diggy Coit in the starting lineup, who is more RJ size? Just what's that all going to look like? We'll find out what those matchups are. But I'll be certainly watching for those matchups. Keep your eye out for it too. Who does Kansas put on RJ and how do they defend him? And then the last thing I'll say before we take a break and then get to our Four Corners preview, Carolina needs to not be intimidated by Kansas being number one. Carolina needs to not be intimidated by Hunter Dickinson and, these dudes that get all these attention. I want to see the Tar Heels go right at the Jayhawks. I want to see them be bold. I want to see them be confident. This team is athletic enough, absolutely, to play with these Jayhawks, but they got to believe it. And they got to know that they can go in and not only play with these guys, but handle themselves and win this basketball game. Is it more likely than not that Kansas wins? Absolutely. Let's recognize that. Not many people go into Allen Fieldhouse and win. It's just one of the best home court advantages in the country. Let's just recognize that. But that doesn't mean that it can't be done. And that doesn't mean that the Tar Heels aren't gifted and athletic enough to do it. But you got to make it happen. And that's what we're going to watch for tonight as this game started. Well, to help you get even more prepared and ready for it, of course, we got to get to our Four Corners preview, a nod to Coach Dean Smith. And perhaps there's no more appropriate time to have this than when the Tar Heels are facing Coach Smith's alma mater. So we're going to start by asking the question, can the Carolina front court hold their own against Kansas and Hunter Dickinson? We'll talk about that in just a second. Hey, right after I tell you about LinkedIn Jobs, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. So you really need to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team, both faster and for free. And it's cool because LinkedIn isn't just like this job board like other places you see. They actually help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even people who might not be actively searching for a new role, but might be open to that perfect role that you have for them. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit the other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. What you need to do is hire professionals like a professional using LinkedIn. And they know at LinkedIn that small businesses you're just wearing a bunch of hats and you might not have the time or resources to hire well. So they're trying to always find ways to make this better, like launching a feature that helps you write job descriptions, just making it more efficient for you. So go ahead and join the over 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring and post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody, it's time for the Four Corners preview, where we give you 4 things to watch for in this game to help make you a smarter and more informed fan, and to watch for some of the storylines that I'm watching for. I've already given you a couple, but I want to give you 4 specific different ones from what we've already talked about. And again, of course, this is a nod to Dean Smith's famed Four Corners offense. So number 1, the biggest question on all our minds, the biggest question that's been there all offseason: will Hunter Dickinson exploit Carolina's new look front court, or can the Tar Heels hold their own? Will the combination of Jalen Washington, Jalen Withers, Van Allen Lubin, maybe we see Ty Clodd in this game, we didn't see him against Elon, will they be able to at least hold their own against Hunter Dickinson and Kansas front court? So for me, I don't believe that the Carolina front court has to try to outplay Hunter Dickinson. They just have to not get outplayed by him and the rest of the Kansas front court, which includes like freshman Flory Bidunga, who we just talked about, or redshirt junior Zach Clements, for example. They just have to basically play to an even playing field against them, and then trust that the Carolina backcourt, which is where you believe all your best skill set is, can outplay the Kansas backcourt. And basically that's what we're looking for almost all season long. Now, when the Carolina front court can be at a plus, bonus, and we'll take that. But these guys have to be up for the task, and they got to be ready for it. Again, like I said just a second ago, don't back down. Go straight at these dudes. I think Hunter Dickinson seems to just always get frazzled and messed up when you go at him. And I feel like that's what Armando did so well in Carolina's couple matchups against Michigan when Dickinson was there. Go at him, frustrate him, and just do everything you need to get under his skin. So what I'll be watching for is, like, if I'm the Carolina coaching staff, I'm going to have a very specific plan for how we're going to attack Hunter Dickinson. Can we involve him in ball screens, get him out on the perimeter? And I know he himself pops out and will take some threes, but can you use the athleticism of Jalen Washington and Jalen Withers and Van Allen Lubin to kind of run him around a little bit and wear him out? Can you get him in foul trouble by going at him, whether it's through some of these bigger guys, getting him moving laterally out on the wings, or by the guards attacking him in the post and forcing him to make a business decision of either Olay or foul? Sure, he'll get a block or two, but don't let that deter you. Keep going after him. So watch out for this front court and how they can do. Number 2 in the Four Corners preview. Can Carolina avoid being overwhelmed by the fog? When you go into this building, there's literally a sign that says, "Pay heed, all who enter. Beware of the fog." And I love it. It's clever. It's great. It gives this building character and identity, and that's part of the very fabric of college basketball. And so as somebody who loves this sport, man, I love it. I love it. But what Carolina is going to have to do is not allow themselves to be intimidated, as so many teams before them have been. A lot of Big 12 teams know how to go in and handle it, but even they struggle because this place is just so daunting. And so what the Tar Heels are going to have to do is not, I mean, it's like a straight up Hoosiers moment, right? When they go to Hinkle Fieldhouse for the state championship game and the measurements are all the same. It's like that. But particularly, I'm watching for kind of two things. How do the freshmen in particular handle this? Thinking about Ian Jackson and Drake Powell. You know, they've both been in big time experiences, big time environments because of the high level of AAU basketball and other stuff that they've played at. But this is a different beast and it's a different animal. So how will they be able to handle themselves? Can they slow their heart rates and not get sped up and do the other things? Can RJ and Seth and Elliot help rein them in, for example? So I'm going to be watching for that. How do those young guys handle the road environment, but the older guys too? And then secondly, what do you do when there's momentum? When Kansas just gets on a crowd-fueled run, what does Carolina do to shut it down? Because there isn't an Armando Bacot to just throw the ball to and get a bucket. And I feel like that means a lot of what you're going to have to do to stop runs this year is going to have to be precipitated on the defensive side of the ball. Carolina is going to have to get stops, be active, and mess things up. So that brings us to Four Corners preview point number 3, in which I say that Elliot Cadeau has to control this game. And I know that in this day and age, there are not a ton of true point guards like Elliot Cadeau is. But DeJuan Harris, Kansas's point guard, is that. He is a true point guard. He can score just like Elliot can score, but Kansas is at his best when he is able to distribute, get other guys involved, and let them score. And he'll score when he needs to, but that's what you're looking at. So what I think is going to be critical for the Tar Heels' success in this game is for Elliot to probably play around 35, 36 minutes, really control the tempo and tenor of this game, run, get out and go. And I mean, I'm talking, yes, he needs to score some and call his shot when it's open, but I'm looking for like 10 to 12 assists from Elliot in this game while limiting his turnovers to maybe 2, like a 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And being, like we see moments, and we saw a lot more toward the end of last year, and we saw it again against Elon on Monday. Like Elliot is scrappy. He'll get on the floor. He'll dive after loose balls. He'll help set the tone. And that's what he needs to be in this game. Under control. He, just like the freshman, cannot allow the fog to get to him. Because when it does, you speed up and you do things you don't normally do. So Elliot Cadeau, I think, is critical that he control this game. Four Corners point number 4. Run, run, run. Carolina is going to be at their best season long when they can get out in transition and go and go and go. They were able to do that at times and pretty well against Elon, finishing, I believe, with 18 fast break points, if I remember correct. I'm not looking at the box score right now. And, at some levels, that was hard against Elon because Elon's desire to get back, sit into that zone and not let Carolina get out and run. So Carolina, by virtue of getting 11 steals, was able to create some live ball turnovers and get out and run and do that. So more of that, keep doing that, make that happen. But then also something we didn't see, I think, at the level that Carolina needs to be at is finishing at the rim when they have these run out moments. The Tar Heels were 9 for 21 on layups against Elon. That's 12 misses, and 4 for 7 on dunks. That's 3 more misses, meaning 15 total misses at the rim for Carolina. And I mean, to be fair, a couple of those, there was that one possession where there was like 2 or 3 misses on a run out right in a row. Gotta finish those, especially if you want to have a hope in a game like this. If Carolina is going to sniff a victory here, they've got to finish more consistently at the rim. And so I'm going to be watching for that. How does Carolina get out and go and use this tempo that Coach Davis is talking about seeing? Keep your foot on the gas. Let's go. So there you go. Four Corners preview. That's 4 things we're going to be watching for. Again, can Carolina hold their own against Hunter Dickinson and Kansas front court? Can the Heels can they avoid being overwhelmed by the fog? Elliot Cadeau has to control the game and run, baby. All right, there we go. Now, Jay Billis, at the beginning of each basketball season, does a 1 through 68 ranking with a capsule on each of those 68 teams. He has the Heels 10th, and I think that's about appropriate for right now. But really what intrigued me most was what it was he said about the Tar Heels in his closing couple sentences. I want to unpack that for you. Plus, we'll get to our weekend whip around, all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Robinhood. Hey, with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the highest of society. But now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for just $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change, and gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. This episode is also brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So maybe you get a hunch in the middle of the game. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right there on that same page where you place your bets. How about some Wooden Award update odds? Hold your nose for this first one because Cooper Flagg is now in the lead at plus 430, followed by, hold your nose again, Alabama's Mark Sears at plus 500, then RJ at plus 650, who has moved past Hunter Dickinson at plus 850, and then Cam Jones at plus 1200. He's from Marquette, and Janai Broome from Auburn at plus 1400. So, get in on this. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Never waste a hunch and go make every moment more at FanDuel.com. It's an official sportsbook of the NFL. All right, I found this really interesting reading on Thursday. The Billustrator, Jay Billis, put out his annual preseason or early season 1 through 68 rankings. The Tar Heels are ranked 10th. That's fine. That's great. Whatever. But that's not why I'm here to talk about that. He starts his capsule, Billis does, talking about the Tar Heels with these words, quote, "The Tar Heels will look a bit different from what we have seen in the past. North Carolina has always been a big team up front with anchors down low and on the glass. This team will be faster and more versatile, but the results will be similar." And then he goes on to just talk about the personnel in the middle of the capsule, everything you already know about the Tar Heels, all the names and where they come from and who they are. But then it's how he follows up and bookends the way he started. Remember, he said, "This team will be faster and more versatile, but the results will be similar." And he ends this way. Different isn't a bad thing. This team is how Hubert Davis envisions playing, and the Heels will present matchup problems and will really run buckle up. I love this from Jay Billis. Recognizing that, yes, Carolina is not going to look or play like, for the most part, what you typically expect from the Tar Heels. But, Billis says, I expect the results in the win and loss column to be similar to what we usually come to expect from the Tar Heels, because different doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I think that is something that I personally have been struggling to embrace this offseason, and I would imagine a lot of us have too. But I'll tell you this, I know Jay Billis is a Dookie, but I respect that man's basketball knowledge and his ability to look at a team and dissect it and know what's going to be good and bad. He's not somebody that blows smoke. He'll speak, constructive criticismly when he needs to. And so I love him saying this about the Tar Heels. It just helps give a frame of reference for what Carolina is and could be this year. So maybe that's helpful for you. It was for me. So I just wanted to share it. All right. Let's go to some other sports. Women's basketball was back in action on Thursday evening at home in Carmichael against UNC Wilmington. Result, Carolina wins 77-50. They moved to 2-0 on the season. Really good stuff. Lexi Donarski leads the way with 21 points on 8 of 14, including 5 of 11 from 3. Plus, she chipped in 4 rebounds and 3 steals. 14 from Renaya Kelly comes in second. Really good stuff when Alyssa Usby doesn't have to do it all. In fact, she had a tough shooting night, just made 2 of her, it was 12 or 13 shots, can't remember. But outside of that, the numbers look the same as always, just stat stuffing all over the place. 7 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals for Alyssa. You'll love to see that. And then other encouraging signs, like Blanca Thomas played just 15 minutes, but had 10 rebounds in that time. That's the kind of thing where Carolina has struggled on the glass at times in recent years. And so bringing in players like that is really, really good. And all around, Carolina had a nice balanced scoring attack. 6 different players had 7 or more points. And remember, Carolina only scored 77 total. So that balance is fantastic for what Coach Bang Hart is looking for. And also, I know the score looks like it's just a 27-point victory, if we can put it that way. But man, Carolina blitzed out to a lead in this game, 40-16 at halftime, holding Wilmington to single-digit scoring efforts in each of the first 2 quarters. 7 points in the first quarter, just 9 in the second quarter, while Carolina scored literally 20 in each, and then were effectively able to go on cruise control after halftime. And so really good stuff from the Tar Heels there as they continue to ramp up their season back in action next week. All right, let's get to the Olympic sports. Field hockey. Oh, baby, today is the ACC championship. The team is now 17-0 on the season. They beat Cal 5-0 Tuesday in the quarterfinals, Syracuse 3-1 Wednesday in the semi, and today face Boston College at noon on ACC Network for the ACC championship. So make sure you're locked in on that. BC knocking off Duke, who was the 2 seed, I believe. Do I remember that correctly? I might have that bracket wrong, but I think that's right. Men's soccer. Unfortunately, the fellas have hit a bit of a rough patch here. You remember they lost to BC in the regular season finale. BC, who hadn't won a single ACC game all year. And then the fellas, who were the 6th seed, lost to Cal 2-1 on Wednesday. Cal was the 11 seed in the ACC tournament. So just kind of a difficult stretch for them. The women's soccer team is in action right now also in the ACC semis. Right now, they're in the 71st minute. The score is tied 1-1. Duke held a 1-0 lead at the break, and now Carolina has scored in the second half. And so, man, if you're not locked in on that, go ahead and make sure you tune in right now. Carolina owes Duke some revenge. Duke won on senior night in Chapel Hill and beat the Tar Heels earlier this season. So come on, ladies, pull this thing out. Volleyball, tough action this weekend. Remember, the ladies have been playing really well. They're 18-3 overall, 10-2 in ACC play. Lost a difficult home match to Georgia Tech last weekend. Georgia Tech was ranked in the teens, but now the Tar Heels are on the road today at 6 p.m. at number 1 in the nation, Pitt, and then Sunday at number 10 in the nation, SMU. That one's at 1 p.m. So a massive test for the women. You'd love to win one or both of these, but it's just, you just want to go on the road and not get blitzed by 2 top 10 teams, right? You want to stay competitive. Wrestling is now getting going with their action. Last weekend, they were at the Southeast Open to kick off the season. In the Open division, 3 Tar Heels won their weight class. Spencer Moore, shout out to Spencer, Ethan Oakley, and Jaden Scott. In the freshman-sophomore division, 4 more champions, Elias Nevada, Nick O'Neill, Jake Daly, and Robert Platt. So congrats to all 7 of those fellas. And by the way, Spencer Moore tabbed as ACC Wrestler of the Week. Man, way to go, Spencer. That's incredible. And then the guys had their first dual action this weekend up in Annapolis, Maryland. That's at Navy. So they two duels on Saturday, Drexel at noon. That'll be on YouTube, not YouTube TV, like actually on YouTube. And then actually against Navy at 3 p.m. Eastern, also on YouTube. So make sure you tune into all that great information. All right, gang, fun show. Great to be together to wrap up the week that's been, to preview Kansas, and to get ready for the weekend ahead. I am amped for this game tonight. I really do think Carolina is going to be competitive with the Jayhawks. Whether they win or not, I don't know. Can't say for sure, but I'm elated for this game. Win or lose, as I said, we will have our live reaction postcast right here on the Locked On Tar Heels channel on YouTube, and then I'll send it out to the audio for those of you who prefer to listen. So it'll be everywhere you want to find it. Make sure you're locked in on that. I'll even put out the link for the YouTube version of it earlier on Friday. So if you're listening to this now, that link might already be out. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you do that so you don't miss a single second. If you're not in the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, y'all, come join us. It's free. It's a great community of Tar Heels, really safe space where we just have a blast and talk Tar Heels all day long. Link for that is in the show notes. If you want to go even deeper, join the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders so you can get all the latest stats and information and data and record book updates straight from me, free when you're a Locked On Tar Heels Insider. Plus, you get to communicate and text with me one-on-one directly. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tonight after the game, but until then, peace.